with the second one first. If we started the band today, I would say probably not, because the whole reason why we're cited as an influence is we were lucky enough to be there at the beginning of this genre of music. So, you know, transplanting what we did then to now and imagining we just started now, it's very hard to say, but I would doubt that we'd be considered to be influential. You know, it takes time to do that. I mean, we weren't considered an important band in 1991, but now we are. It's very nice, but, you know, the albums we made during that period took time to become popular. They weren't very successful when we made them. Going back to the first bit of the question, I don't think that stuff's a burden, because Jeff and myself, we're not the kind of people to take that stuff seriously. It's very nice that people say it, but you can't really get carried away with it, because there's plenty of people who like metal who have never even listened to Carcass, so you can't take yourself too seriously, really. No.
Yeah, fair enough. What do you consider your biggest musical achievement and not necessarily Carcass related?
Wow. That's difficult. In terms of what we've recorded, I would probably say the latest album, purely because that was the biggest challenge. To do something that's valid in that situation was very hard to do, you know. Or rather, it wasn't actually hard, but like, what I mean is, there was more at stake. We could have ruined the, whatever you want to call it, legacy of the band or whatever. So, I suppose it's easier when you're starting out, because there's no pressure on you, there's no expectations. As we mentioned earlier, people aren't looking at you as a significant band because you're just kids. And enough times has passed where there is some level of expectation about what we do. So yeah, it was lovely to put this record out and have people react to it in a positive way. But as a more general thing, for me personally, doing things like supporting Iron Maiden in Mexico, that would be way up the list in terms of feeling like you've achieved something, because that was the first band I ever saw play on a stage when I was a kid. So,
yeah, I can imagine. If I'm not mistaken, there have been 17 years between Swan Song and Surgical Steel.
Yeah, I think
less,
so. Yeah.
Something in that range. So, how easy or how difficult or how challenging was it to pick up from where you left after such a long break?
I wouldn't say it was easy or hard. It was more kind of, we just did what we do. When Jeff and I work on something together, this is the result, you know. We're not the kind of people to analyse too much, so it wasn't like we got around a table and discussed things and made plans. We just started writing material.
Okay.
And we were lucky because we had a fantastic drummer, Dan Wilding. You know, he's in an awkward position because he's stepping into the shoes of Ken Owen, a very distinctive drummer, and also a founder member of our band. But he's done it beautifully because he's a tasteful musician. He's naturally musical, so he's being himself up there when he plays the drums. But he's also very aware of what Ken achieved, and he does kind of include some of that style in his playing, almost effortlessly. It's not like a conscious thing. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, we would have gone crazy if we'd stopped and thought about what people wanted from us. We just had to make the album we thought we should make, and you know, that's what's up.
So everything on this album is new material. There were no leftovers.
No. There's plenty of riffs that go back a long way. I had a cassette of ideas from the 90s.
Oh wow.
And yeah, I mean, at least 50% of it was material that didn't get used, and the other half was stuff that you can hear on the Swan Song record. So yeah, that was kind of a big part of it. And then I wrote a load of stuff around this period, and then there were some things I'd written in between the different eras of Carcass. So it's kind of a mishmash of everything. Yeah, once we started writing, it was just so much fun. There was a real flow going on. So every day I was coming into practice with new things. So yeah, you kind of get a blend of the old and new on this one, I'd say. Yeah.
So it was a natural going process, not necessarily a struggle.
Yeah, well, if it felt forced, we know we're on a losing streak. You know, probably shouldn't be doing it if it felt forced. do, because if you're going to really break it down, there are less blast beats on Heartwork, even less of the Slayer tempo stuff as well. And that was quite intentional at that time. We were deliberately trying to make a record that was different from the previous one. And then by the time we got to Swan Song, it was like this bizarre cross between death metal and hard rock. And in some places it definitely worked, in other places I'm not so sure. But that's the record that polarised, well, not just people, but polarised the band. And it didn't come out until after we broke up. So I didn't really get to hear what people felt, but I gather it was very unpopular, and then later acquired a following. I meet people now, and it's some people's favourite record, and then there's still people who hate it. So.
You had this period that actually you started without any new material, but you started touring and playing, so you kind of had to rely on old stuff, right?
Yes.
How did that feel? Did it feel safe or a bit boring? Let's not say boring, but yeah, boring in a way.
Well,
what were the feelings to come back with 17-year-olds?
No, that's a very valid question, and I would say it was safe, and as much fun as it was, because bloody hell, we got to travel the world, play to some killer audiences, and it was very moving, the kind of response we got for this old material that hadn't been played live for ages. But yeah, you're not taking any risks really by doing that, and after a while it started to grate on my nerves a little bit, because I like to feel like I'm involved in something that has a future, even if it's a short-term future, it's going forward in some way. But this just felt like, I don't know, it was verging on a kind of pantomime thing where you're just going through the motions. At that time we had a little choice, because the lineup, it's not the lineup you see today. Michael and Daniel had their loyalties to Arch Enemy. They weren't really able or willing to commit to doing a new Carcass record. So Jeff and myself, our hands were tied at that point. Couldn't even be discussed really, because everyone had a crazy schedule, and that was just clear at the outset. We can't do a new record, whether some of us want to or not. And then when that lineup disintegrated, all of a sudden, I guess we had the choice to do it if we wanted to, and we did. I mean, I'd wanted to do that from the start, really, because I felt like if we're going to make the effort to get this back on track, why just play some shows doing old stuff? I don't know. I just felt the vibe, and I thought, we could do a record. But
do you get to interact with the grind things that you think about? Like if you think surgical steel, it means something that happens in the surgery room, and do you ever get these live experiences for the inspiration of your music at all, or is it something that you guys like to try to write about?
Well, all of this stuff, the lyrical content, began when we were teenagers, and you've got a very different mindset. You're still, if you're a male anyway, you're probably still quite angry about whatever it is, school, parents, girls, I don't know, but so you need to channel that if you're doing something creative, and that's what we ended up doing. I mean, I have no idea why it went that way, but it was fun to do. And actually Ken, out of everybody, was the person who initiated that, because he used to write lyrics when we were like 14 at school.
Oh wow.
And that was kind of something I wanted to bring into the band when we started it, because I loved what he was doing. Later on Jeff came in and he took over and he took it even further. But in terms of the present day, I think Surgical Steel is an interesting one, because the lyrics aren't really of that nature. Jeff's been quite clever, because the album title and some of the song titles take people's brains in that direction, but if you actually read the lyrics carefully, the content is quite different. So he's kind of he's pleased two different groups of people there. The people that want that stuff, and also the people that want something that's a little bit more substantial and personal. Because he's being honest about where he's at. He's a guy in his mid-40s who's been through a bit in this bizarre little circus that we call extreme metal. And I guess that's what you're seeing on the lyric sheet. I mean, I love what he's done with this album.
You have a musical history with various bands and various projects. If you can make some sort of comparison of 20 years versus today in the way of touring, making music, the way you have to behave in front of the crowd. When you started, you started in an environment that was not as organized maybe as today.
Yes,
it was way more hectic.
Yeah.
Today there's maybe a bit more money, a bit more attention.
Yeah. Yeah, well,
I'm not sure.
there's
Anything
loads of factors.
Yeah.
First thing is, metal is so much bigger now. It's almost like it's become a fairly cool thing to be into if you're a young person. And, you know, if you go back to the end of the 80s or early 90s, it was not cool at all. You were in a very small subculture that was frowned upon by everybody else. You know, both sides have got their positives, but it does mean you have this weird thing where some metal bands, some of the younger ones, you actually get the vibe they've got into this to be popular.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, we didn't start doing this to be popular, we were doing it because we weren't popular, whether it was at school or socially in general. You know, we were just strange people that were fixated on this music and we didn't care what other people thought. So that's definitely changed. I mean, with some of the American bands you can see that, like, almost like some of the jock characters, like quite alpha male guys who, like, I don't know, all of a sudden they've gone into playing metal. I don't know, it seems weird to me, but I guess it makes sense to them. But,
and there's another thing, you keep reading that this band has signed a contract with a label for 3 albums. This is something I kind of noticed lately. Probably back in the days where the labels would just take in whatever you would give them, but today they kind of, are they pressuring the bands in any way? Do you think?
The business is more efficient. Yeah, going back to your original question, that's another huge thing. There's an industry surrounding metal now, which wasn't in place. So when we were doing our stuff the first time around, there were no festivals of this size. I think there was the one in Holland, but we would never have been invited because of the music we were playing. And so when we came back and started doing festivals, this was all new to me. I'd never played to more than 4,000 people in one place. So going up and playing to 40,000 people was just, that was scrambling my brain at first. And then when you'd start doing interviews and people would be like, how does it feel to be back in the festivals? And I'm like, we're not back. I mean, we never did this in the first place. You know, because usually we're the oldest people around. So people don't know what we went through originally, and it doesn't resemble what metal is like now. And then going to another part of your question, the internet's obviously changed everything, because let's say a guy does want to go on stage half-pissed and, you know, go a bit nuts on stage or say something that's a little bit off colour. In the old days, that was just gone. It's a moment in time and it's gone. But now you'll be reminded of that forever, potentially. And it's so annoying, because, you know, everybody's human and you can't be professional all the time. And, you know, you might say the wrong thing in an interview, as I often do, or Jeff does, and people remind you of it years later. Or they twist what you said and make it even worse, and it's just like, oh, Christ.
Okay. Yeah, so that's a big difference as well.
Yeah.
If I'm not mistaken, I heard that you started singing again lately? Or
well, I wouldn't say singing, I'm doing vocals.
Whatever, you take the microphone.
Yeah, no, I am doing a bit.
Live as well? Or?
Yeah, absolutely, yeah. I did some backing vocals on this new record, and in the live situation I do some stuff.
How does it feel to go back to?
It's a good laugh. I mean, I'm not going to lie. I'm not going to lie and say I want to be doing vocals all the time, because I actually just don't. I like playing guitar. I'd rather be on the side. And you know, Jeff's brilliant. He's a great vocalist and a great frontman. I don't want to be messing with that because I can't do it. But he did persuade me a while back. You need to do some of this stuff sonically, because it's part of the band's sound historically, and it just thickens things out in places. And yeah, it's fun to do as long as I can just dip my toe in the water and then, you know, run off again.